How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on your show. What?
So this is me interviewing my cousin Derek Dugas. We did interviews for a class project and I wanted to talk to someone who had experience in the world of cinema. I immediately knew I would interview this man because I wanted to get a sense of what it's like to work behind the camera, but I soon found myself drawn to the aspects of working on both ends.
It all started, when I was a kid watching Sunday night Disney programs and Muppets. And then I always had a deep desire to put on shows and organize shows. But looking back, really what I enjoyed most was directing other people in the show.
This really caught my attention and now our conversation was taking a turn in a new and interesting direction. I was discovering what drives someone to go from one discipline to another, and it seems to me it's been rather common for actors to turn to directing or act and direct in their own features.
What I can say is I love it. I mean, this thing kicks some serious asphalt.
Even without any experience, I had to imagine it was difficult devoting yourself to acting and then suddenly deciding to switch things up after focusing so much of your time in one field. So now I wanted to find out a little bit more about Derek's influence to go from acting to directing.
So what ended up happening for me is it became pretty confusing along the way as to what direction I wanted to take because I liked acting, I liked photography, I liked videography, I liked being creative. And so the transitions for me were really about trying to find who I was.
I learned a lot hearing about this transition from Derek's perspective. So now I thought about who else to do some research on for this topic. I chose Andy Samberg. Andy's been a huge influence of mine since I was growing up, and although he didn't necessarily start with acting and then directing, his beginnings sort of involved both of these things. He started off with something called Digital Shorts and Saturday Night Live. Here's a bit from SNL short documentary, Behind the Digital Shorts.
Me and my two buddies, Akiva and Yorma, all grew up together in Berkeley, and we moved to LA together after college and put together a website.
We sort of centered it around our house, which we called The Lonely Island, and made little videos centering around our weird lives in LA, I guess.
Digital Shorts from Andy and The Lonely Island had me in tears watching them since I was a kid. This reminded me about Derek wanting to be creative and finding your own way. Andy Samberg clearly found his calling early on and was making people laugh with a bit of action in front and behind a camera.
And it got on, which was monumental for us, Like, whoa, it worked. We shot something and they aired it.
And then the second one, I think, was called Peyote, which was really funny. And the third one was Lazy Sunday, and it just blew the roof off the place.
Lazy Sunday, wake up in the late afternoon. Call Parnell just to see how he's doing. Hello, what up, Parn? Yo, Samberg, what's cracking? You thinking what I'm thinking? Party up! Man, it's happening!
The way we made that was just recording it in our room on a Tuesday, and then Kiva shooting it on Thursday, and me holding the song on a little iPod, playing it back.
68 to Broadway! Step on it, sucker! What you wanna do, Chris? Back attack, mother...
So at this point I have two very different perspectives on actor-directors. Derek Dugas made a transition, whereas Andy Samberg started with both. Becoming an actor-director doesn't necessarily mean you have to start with one or the other, and it was certainly educational and informative to finding this out through my research. For my last subject, I went with an all-time favorite in Clint Eastwood. Eastwood has always been a mysterious and wonderful actor who I've admired greatly, but I never really looked up his switch from acting to directing. After watching a short documentary from WatchMojo.com about the career of Clint Eastwood, I got to know a little bit more about his experiences and his transition.
Having made it as an actor, his greatest achievement was still to come. In 1971, Eastwood ventured behind the camera to direct his first movie project, the thriller Play Misty for Me. He also starred in the film, playing the part of a man being stalked by a crazy female admirer who turns violent.
After watching this, I got to know more about Eastwood's history of being an actor, then a director, and then an actor-director. This was really fun for me to watch and learn more about one of my favorites. But with what I've learned so far from Derek Dugas and Andy Samberg was how they all started and what sort of inspired them. So to keep this going, I found an interview of Eastwood with BBC's Michael Parkinson and found out what I was looking for.
What about the business yourself of acting? Because you directed this movie, and you're backing off, aren't you, doing directing and acting in the same movie?
Well, I've been considering it. It's at some point it's kind of ridiculous. I started in 1970. The only way I could get the film made was
Play Misty.
Play Misty for me. The only way I could get it made was to be in it, and so then later I figured, well, if I can do this successfully for 1 or 2 films, maybe I'll be able to move around behind the camera.
First, I got to learn about Eastwood's beginning as an actor, and then here I learned about how this transition happened. After doing all this research and finding out how these people began their journeys, I found an inspiration in their stories and understanding how everyone's experiences are never the same, and yet they all have the same passion in wanting to entertain others.
There's always something to learn. There's always something new to learn about yourself, about acting, about entertainment. And so as long as you're learning something, it's a pleasure to do it.